All right, guys. Strong Life podcast with Rusty Whitt at Troy University. For those of you that are loyal listeners, last week I blew it. I said we're doing a podcast with Rusty, and our schedules and time zones were off, so it transitioned into a solo episode. But now we got the real Rusty Whitt, so this is going to be a great episode. Rusty and I have been friends for a couple years. We met at Summer Strong. I don't know how many years ago that
Eight,
was.
it was.
Which one?
I think we met initially around 2018 and started warming up and talking from that point on. I think
Yeah,
around.
I 2018, so now 20, yeah, about 5 years. And so Rusty, the first time I had heard about you, I think I had seen, I feel like there was a video where they kind of like did like a little background on you. I feel like it was ESPN, but maybe I saw it on YouTube. And I don't remember what university you were at, but they were really
UL,
showcasing. Where was
yeah,
it?
UL Lafayette. ESPN Game Day came and did a little 2-minute deal on me during Veterans Day,
Okay.
and it was right before we played Florida. They were ranked like number 7th in the nation. It was a pretty cool weekend for us.
You
So
were, oh, go,
UL, that was
go ahead.
about, oh shoot, 11 years ago when that
They were,
video came.
they were showcasing, it's kind of a blur to me. And I know I brought this up to you when we first met. I was like, oh, I saw you on ESPN. And, uh, I know, so, after the last Summer Strong, you really broke down the history of your strength and conditioning career. And I personally, I knew you were in the military, you were in SF, but I didn't know that you were a strength coach before. And then when
Yeah.
9/11 happened, you enlisted as like a quote unquote older guy
Yeah.
going into the army. So can we give like a little brief history of um, kind of where you started, then military, and where you are now, just so people listening and watching have a nice kind of history of where you started and where you are now?
So it's a long and winding road. I'll try to make it as concise as possible. I played football at Abilene Christian University. I had my very last season. I had a strength coach come in by the name of Cliff Falcons, a world class discus thrower. Changed my entire body, my entire mindset. So I decided to uh, change majors and become a strength coach. So I started chasing this profession. Uh, First job I ever had was a personal trainer at a Gold's Gym. Then I got a GA position at a Division II school called Midwestern State for about a year and a half. I got my first big job at the University of Texas in Austin, and Rock Gullickson gave me a shot. Now he's one of my best friends and my mentor. University of Texas, I really got bit by the whole just big program bug, the excitement, the massive amounts of planning and detail that goes into training athletes. That it was just just a great immersion for me. Uh, After that, I did a internship with the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, and then I started seeing the kind of athletes it takes to be world class level, and seeing their work habits, and just further motivated me to work in this field. And then my first job, I actually got a paycheck was William and Mary on the East Coast. I was the dumbest guy on campus. Um,
Why you
just
say that?
a high academic place with a lot
Oh.
of really motivated athletes, and the second oldest college in America. And I was there for just a short amount of time, and then Rock Gullickson had got let go at Texas, and he said, "Hey, come back to or come to Louisville." He just got hired at the University of Louisville under John L. Smith, and he goes, "I guarantee you'll get a head job from here." And I already had my master's, and I was studying for the CSCS. This is before the CSCCA even existed. I took my qualification test and got my CSCS at Louisville, and I got my first head job at Sam Houston State. Sam Houston State for roughly 5 years, and then the events of 9/11 happened. And as I said at Summer Strong, I had an ACL repair, which prevented me from enlisting in this, in 2001. And then I joined up a little bit later and did 6 years in the Army. So I coached for about 9.5 years, took a 6-year hiatus to be in the military. And my first job out of the Army, I went to Special Forces route. As I probably should have explained at Summer Strong, I enlisted with a Ranger contract, an option 40 to be a Ranger. And my contract was changed. My orders were changed in airborne school. My sergeant airborne saw something in me, mainly my age, and thought I was too old to go to Ranger Battalion. So my orders were changed to SF. So I went to 18 X-ray program. Did 6 years in the Army. I got my first job out of the Army at Rice University, thanks to David Bailiff. And went from Rice for a year and a year and a half at Rice. I went to UL Lafayette for about 5 years. Jumped to Texas Tech for 3 years. And then when Cliff Kingsbury got let go, I went to Army West Point, 2019 year, the entire year. And then I got to Troy. So it's been a long and winding road to get here. I had to, be very humble, being a head strength coach for about 9 years, getting let go, then going to be an assistant at West Point, and it made me a better person going to West Point and watching those coaches work with those guys. And it was, I'm glad I did it. And then I've been here at Troy since 2020.
Right. And for those that are listening, when I post this up on the website, I'm going to embed the Instagram videos that you share. The guys are just killing it, and just tremendous training. But I want to back up, because if I recall, so like before going into the Army, you were at one point, you were a paid strength coach, and then you went and were an intern somewhere. You went to the Olympic Training Center as an intern.
Well, in order to complete my master's degree, I had 6 more hours to do at University of Texas, and I was entering my second summer, and it was May of a long time ago. I was entering my second summer, my May period, and I was offered an internship that would take 9 graduate hours. It would give me 9 hours, so I'd be over my allotment to graduate. So rather than take Dr. Some of these instructors at University of Texas the class would take all of your time. I didn't really have time to GA effectively and be a good GA. And with given the opportunity to work in the field or just have my nose in a book, I decided to go do the internship. And I had to write a thesis my thesis was year-round training for Greco-Roman wrestlers. So in doing that and talking to Greco coaches and athletes, I thought it was a pretty good trade-off. So the internship got me where I could graduate my master's in exercise science. So then after that is when I got my first paid gig at William & Mary. It was not very much money, but I felt like I was on an upward trajectory from doing that.
Today, there's such a argument of like how much interns should be getting paid. Should they get paid? What's like the, whole trade-off? So when I was at Rutgers, we had GAs. When I was at Lehigh, there was no interns, and I think every strength coach, including football, was a outside contractor. So I have interns right now at my gym in the private sector. I'm not paying them, but we have some interesting like ways of going about them. Like the payment comes through their knowledge, their education. One of the guys is doing a great job, so we allow him to do private training during off hours and keep all the money, so he's getting paid in that way. But I want to go back to, like you mentioned, your first mentor. What was his name? Cliff?
Well, yeah, Cliff Falcons. He's now the shot and disc coach and he coaches throws and strength coach for those throwers at Texas Tech. So he has he only has 15 or so athletes, and he's also their strength coach, and he teaches them how to throw all the implements, the hammer, javelin, discus shot. So he does all of that. And Cliff's did a lot of training overseas and mingled with a lot of East Germans and Russians. We're talking back in the 80s when their the Russian Olympic machine was in full spin.
Oh yeah.
He was exposed to a lot of the things you see out of West Side Barbell with Louis Simmons and the late Louis Simmons, and it was advanced for the day. And what's funny is I find myself doing a lot of the same things now that I did back in the 90s. So I do keep one foot firmly planted in the past, and then I always am looking to be progressive and stay relevant. But as far as your intern topic goes, I pulled out a $30,000 Stafford loan and lived for 3 years, and as an intern, as a GA, and I called myself a GA at University of Texas, but they'd actually canceled their GA program because nobody could maintain the academic requirement to be in grad school in exercise science at University of Texas, because the classes were just tremendously hard. It took everything. I had to take a speed reading course just to keep up. And anyway, it was a paid internship, but Rock called it a GA spot just to help you get hired. Back then, I worked about 9 hours a day in there taking grad classes, but the pay was minimum wage.
Right.
And,
I know that's like such an understandable argument today because of the cost of living and whatnot. But the
yeah,
way, at the private sector, I tell the guys, my goal is to give you knowledge and information that will pay you back for the rest of your life. And in
yeah,
the private sector, I found ways to allow them to make money and not give me any of that money. But I want to, like you mentioned, like lessons learned from Cliff. What are training or even like psychological or communication skills that you learned from him that kind of still stick with you today? Because what's to me intrigued about the past is our how hard it was to get knowledge. You had to call people or find a magazine or I'm
no,
not sure if Angel Spazov was at UT while you
yeah.
were there. So what, like from with Cliff, what are some very memorable lessons that you still hold on to and use?
Well, I had to work my senior year summer. I had to work at a furniture store to make rent and afford food. And Cliff told me, you need to give me 2 good hours a day. And when will that be? And he goes, preferably 2 hours back to back. So I said, I get off work at 4. And he goes, okay, well, I'll see you from 4:30 to 6:30. And 6:30, you'll probably bleed into 7. So I said, okay. So I gave him basically 2.5 hours of my day and trusted him. And he was running a program called Speed Dynamics. And it's very similar to what you see coaches doing these days. I mean, it was a lot of plyometrics, a lot of explosive work. And we would run first and go in the weight room and do basically his discus routine. I mean, we're a lot of pulls, snatch pulls, not as much catching as I thought we would do. But we did a lot of pulls. He taught me how to squat right.
How come no catching or less catching?
I'm sorry.
How come he minimized the catching?
He was big on the snatch, grip, shrug, pull, hang, shrug, pull. We would catch about once a week, and we'd pull 4 times a week. I think he was maybe because he was a little bit older guy, and he his wrists were tweaking because of all of his throwing, and did a lot of shot and discus when he was younger. But he would work out with me, and we had an old school Samson leaper machine. If you ever seen those before with the
I,
chain drop.
I heard of it. Describe it.
Well, it looks like a like a machine squat, a vertical squat machine,
My
big
friend
pad,
got one.
and there's a big chain that like a gear on it,
Yes.
and kind of deloads your bottom portion a little bit, and then it was like a jump squat machine. And, and actually, I had one at Sam Houston State. I used. I haven't seen one in decades,
My
but
friend got one. He picked it up on Facebook Marketplace. He lives in Florida. I feel like he may have had to go to Louisiana or something to get it. He found it on Facebook Marketplace for like $250.
I would drive to Florida right now to get one of those.
That's right.
What's remarkable about that machine is that as soon as you get in it, it teaches you how to squat. I mean, the way you have to hinge for it to move properly. So I would get athletes at Sam Houston State, my first head job, who didn't understand how to hip hinge and squat properly, and I would just put them in that machine, and all of a sudden they would get it. So yeah, Cliff taught me that you can make a lot of dramatic change in a short amount of time. I mean, I ran track in high school. I had a fantastic track coach, Don Osterman, and on numerous occasions, wearing 800-meter shoes, I would run a 4.5 40 on a track,
Damn.
which isn't a high school kid. And then I took that to getting beat up and not having a weight program for 4 years at Abilene Christian because I redshirted. And when Cliff came in, he was like, "Dude, you haven't matured any. You still have a high school physique." And he was very brutally honest about that. So he helped me clean up my diet, and I went from 190 to 215 in a very short amount of time.
What
And
were
then
the nutrition changes? Interesting to hear about nutrition from how old was Cliff at this time, by the way? Was he 40s, 50s? What was he?
just throwing, I think, in the 84 to 88 time frame in college. So we're not talking late 50s, maybe even pushing 60 now.
So his knowledge is coming from like Strength and Health magazine, maybe the Vince Gironda steak and eggs diet.
Yeah.
So what did he tell you for nutrition, Rusty? What was his advice?
McDonald's. There's a McDonald's right across the street from campus, like there is everywhere. And I thought that healthy eating back then was, don't put salt on my French fries. I didn't know anything. And I was all about the calories. And he taught me or just told me, hey, go buy the minute rice in a bag. They had that back then, the minute rice and ground beef and eating a lot of chicken breast. I was boiling chicken breast and pan frying it and making chicken spaghetti. And I just started eating a little bit cleaner and increasing my protein intake a lot. I mean, a lot more protein, and it transformed me. But he was very intense in the weight room, and a lot of he would show me videos. We're talking VHS tapes of him training with Russians and some Germans, and they're like yelling at each other. Kind of like when you see, Thor working out in Iceland. Every rep matters kind of intensity.
Yeah.
And I had been a high rep guy. Our defensive coordinator, God bless him, at Abilene Christian, he would write down on the grease board 3 sets of 10. It was bigger, faster, stronger kind of stuff. 3x8, 3 and so I was used to doing quality reps that are 2 or 3 reps.
Right. What
Doing that.
what were those VHS tapes? Was that the Iron Mind Training Hall tapes?
It was stuff that he had shot or he had from Germany and
Wow.
when he was overseas. It was like just shot by one of the it could have been some stuff from Angel. I mean, it was Bulgarian stuff. It was the video you often see on YouTube of I believe he's a Swiss jumper doing all the plyometric and jumps up the bleach. That era of stuff. And when I was in high school, and I can't think of his name, there was a spokesperson for Bigger, Faster, Stronger, and he was a world class thrower who could run like a 4.5 at 290. anyway, it was the burgeoning beginning of our field back then, really.
Right.
And a lot of it came from the East German, the Russian throwing community, I believe, and of course the Olympic lifting community. It was big, and then when I did my internship at the Olympic Training Center, it was Dragomir was the strength coach there, and all of his programs were handwritten, and I would give my left arm. I had his programs back then, and I have no idea what happened to him. But I would go and I would run copies of his paper handwritten workouts, and that's how he distributed his workouts. He would hand write them and run them on a copy machine and give them to his athlete.
What's his? I
And half
remember
be in Russian and half would be in English.
that's interesting. I'm trying not to cut you off, Rusty, because when one of us speaks, it like mutes it out. What was Dragomir's last name? I can't remember. Or that
I
was
thought
his.
it was. I could look it up real quick.
Yeah. So, and I remember hearing, you know, who I think mentioned Dragomir was Istvan Yavarek has mentioned him. Was
Yeah,
Dragomir from Romania or
I believe he was just Russian. Yeah.
Russian? So when you were at the Olympic Training Center, this was after you got out of the Army?
No, it was way before.
So way
I did
before.
my internship in a better part of '97,
Oh, 97.
and then I joined the Army in early '03.
Okay. Quick question. When you were at the Olympic Training Center for Greco, was like Matt Lindland and Randy Couture there at that time?
Couture had just gotten away, and he's already starting his fighting career.
That was early MMA days,
Yeah,
very early.
early MMA days, and some of the names I do remember, like Ray Brenzer, who was
Oh my God, dude. I could talk about him for a long time. He was I don't want to do it where I'm like over talking you, but we'll get into him. He was a tremendous freak.
yeah. Well, I always consider myself, a rugged guy, and I wasn't afraid to back down from a fight or whatever. But he would bring me to the mat room in there. The USOC had about a 6,000 square foot gym, very well equipped for the day, and then double doors away was the Greco-Roman facility, and the collegiate freestyle used it as well. But it was probably 6 mats, big room, double doors away from USA weightlifting. So I could walk, 10 steps and see some of the greatest wrestlers and the greatest weightlifters in the world. It was a remarkable experience. But Brenzer would take me in and use me as a moving wrestling dummy and just whip my ass. It was ridiculous. I learned a lot
Was he
about
receptive to strength and conditioning? Because he was.
we had 2 upper body ergometers,
Mm-hmm.
hand cranks.
Yep.
And that's the way a lot of our wrestlers would come in and do their cool down or extra work, is they would crank up the tension as much as they could and do upper body ergometer. Well, he would just break the arms off of it, applying so much torque onto it.
He's
So we're like using JB Weld thing together. But the most memorable thing about Brenzer and his guys were their grip strength and their rope pull-ups and towel pull-ups. You putting a 45-pound plate around their waist and doing towel pull-ups. And they bought in. They would do the squats and the cleans and everything,
What's interesting, Rusty, like you mentioned your early influences and getting into the strength and conditioning field in the 90s. And you mentioned the guys who were learning from the Germans and the Russians compared to today, and you being in football, like they say, quote unquote, football has changed. It's a speed game. And so it seems like a lot of strength coaches don't emphasize strength. They emphasize more speed strength or kind of sub max weights and, I know you have Tendo units, so there's all kinds of like velocity trackers, but when your mentors were studying the Germans and the Russians, those guys were lifting extremely heavy. They really pushed the strength. And
I believe that, there's no better experience than what you learn and see with your own eyes and your own body. And
yes,
for me, faster, I mean, the first thing that happened was he taught me how to squat. Cliff taught me how to bend properly and squat. So I got a lot stronger in my lower body, and he taught me how to clean properly. So yeah, that I developed a base of strength that I hadn't had before. Using a lot of the jumps, and we would do a progression. We would jump into a lone jump pit, and very explosive, like a high hurdle jump, and then jump a high vertical over a hurdle, then into a long jump pit. So high, then long. But everything was based around, the sequencing, I guess, would be, hey, first we're going to get strong, and then we're going to work into the power aspect. And a lot of, I hired my first assistant that I hired last year. My former guy left, but I hired a guy named Colin Kenyon that I met at Army West Point. And Colin he watches some of the things going on. He goes, all they're doing is making weak guys fast. And then how durable are they? How durable are they? How long can they remain fast when they get hurt, or when they get hurt? Because if you're fast and weak, you're going to get tweaked when you get tired, and you're not going to really pack a punch when you hit somebody. So I'm a strength first guy, and then we build off of that, and I'll give you an example of what we did yesterday. We did Tendo deadlifts, which and I know there's some guys, just it's just scraping nails on a chalkboard. We did Tendo deadlifts at 6.65 minimum bar speed, and then we did single leg squats. And on Monday, we did cleans, heavy doubles, supersetted ramp sprints. We got about a 12-meter long ramp in the weight room, and we would do 2 cleans, go to the ramp, and sprint up the ramp. All max effort sprint up the ramp. So in about 3 weeks, those Tendo deadlifts are going to be about 0.9 to 1.0. Which, if you're pulling a weight at 0.9 and 1.0, you can clean it. So we're working on, and I told our guys, if you want to clean 300 pounds, put 315 on the bar and pull it at 1.0, and you'll be able to clean it.
yeah.
So I'm giving these guys the blueprint to clean 300 pounds, and with working the manner of single leg and the way that we squat, we're doing Andersons. We're doing 3 sets of free squats without pins, and then 4 sets of Andersons after that. So I believe in working full ranges of motion and mixing your strength with your power. And we
Like
pull.
what do you mean mixing strength with power? Like a contrast, so like squatting followed by jumping, or when they were doing the
I don't do a full French contrast circuit, but we do usually 2 exercises, like a
yes.
trap bar, shrug pull that was somewhere around 90 to 110% of their clean max, and then we're going to go and we're going to jump up the ramp.
Who built that ramp? Was it there before you got there? Before Troy?
Yeah, I'm not even sure who designed our facility. It was supposed to be a longer ramp with more of an approach, but it works good for doing short sprints and jumping up it.
What were you doing? Technology's so big, Rusty, and you came up through the era of coach's eye. Like, you could see if somebody's going too heavy, and then, hey man,
Yeah.
if you had 2.5 to each side, you're going to miss it. So take us back before technology, because a lot of the listeners on here. We do have college and pro coaches listening, but we have a lot of listeners who don't have technology. What were you doing with regards to helping them choose weight before they could look at velocity on a Tendo? Because you've been using the Tendo for a long time, right?
About 10 years. Yeah, 10,
Oh
12
yeah.
years. Well, actually, since I got out of the military is when I first started noticing the Tendo unit. I saw it when I was stationed at Colorado Springs at Fort Carson. I would go frequent the CSCS headquarters.
Oh,
Alan Hedrick,
that's right.
Coach Hedrick,
I
or no
do.
other.
I
And
remember he wrote a massive article on T Nation back in the day on strongman training for football, where he had tractor tires where he like loaded the insides of them differently. And he had just like kegs lined up against the wall. He was at Air Force Academy back then. Yeah.
well, Alan Hedrick is firmly ingrained in my philosophy, or I should probably flip it. I'm ingrained in his, and he helped me develop a philosophy along with Rock and along with Cliff. But Alan is really heavily into the Olympic movements and squatting full range for heavy front squats, and he's kind of my one of my senseis. He's always looking at my videos. That when they go to Instagram, they also go to my Facebook, and he's like, "I like this, I like this," and he's like, "Why are you doing this? Why are you doing the pocket clean?" So I had to explain why I'm doing the pocket clean.
What's a pocket clean? Like a
Have you
high
seen
clean?
our guys doing the high hip clean
Yes.
with shrugging with their elbows bent?
Yes.
Okay, we call it the pocket clean, and it really puts a huge stress on their traps and upper back, and makes them have quick hip turnover. But anyway, Alan's been was a part of my development, and anyway, I saw Tendo units at the NSCA headquarters a long time ago. We're talking 2008, 2009. So I was like, I want to get some of those. So I've been messing with those for a long time. But before all that existed, it was if you're having to spread your feet on a clean is too heavy. You've got to work on your front squats not strong enough, and that's something that Angel Spazoff taught me at Texas. He watched my feet. He goes, "Well, you're catching it because you don't have confidence in your front squat, and so you need to front squat more." And it was just listening to some of these coaches who've been there, done that for a long time. It's you take the most important pieces and make your own philosophy. So
That
whenever
there though is Rusty. That to me is like Angel saying, "Hey, you're catching wide. You got to you got to get strong in the front squat." You could read about it in a book, or you can lift and spend time training, like your first coach, Cliff. How do I say his last name?
Falcons,
Falcons. He made you, or he lifted with you. And, I have some friends in the college sector like yourself, and you've never said this to me, but other coaches, they said that they're getting GAs and interns who are saying things like, they talk to them, hey, so what training are you doing now? Well, I got to get back into it, or I haven't trained for a while. They're getting into this career, but they don't actually do the thing. I always say that's like having, in the private sector, you wouldn't try to like prepare for a bodybuilding show if your coach was not an experienced bodybuilder, or you
yeah,
wouldn't go to a fat loss person if this person is fat themselves.
yeah.
And that's just, fact. So I like that, like Angel, the things he's saying in my mind, I feel like, hey, that's common sense. Your feet are jumping too wide because you don't want to get under the bar. So just like experience in training.
And then with Rock Gullickson, who gave me my first shot at my first shot at Division I job with Texas. He was a Montana State powerlifting champion and the Northwest Regional powerlifting champion. High seven deadlifter back in the '80s, and weighing around 235, I guess.
Oh, wow.
And he taught me a lot about the benefits of powerlifting and how they can help your Olympic lifts. So, Rock's probably got the strongest back of any man over 65, with the exception of Rudy, who works at Kabuki Strength. But Rock taught me a lot about just the foundation of squatting and deadlifting and bench pressing, and why how he would teach the power clean. I think that's where I first learned the term strong to fast. Strong to fast on the power clean coaching cue, because he would think of the very first pull to your knees in a deadlift, in terms of deadlift, and then the acceleration, would come from doing the Olympic lift, the actual clean itself. Did a lot of shrug pulls with Rock, and and something that I do not do that he did was strap up to a bar and do a lot of heavy shrug pulls, which I don't do that. I just keeping up with straps and watching kids how they kind of rely on it for the catch. I got away from that, but there's a benefit in the actual heavy shrug pulls, and we would do a lot of heavy rack shrug pulls from the kneecap up and strap up on those as well. So there's a benefit to that. We're doing heavy shrug pulls now because the way football has changed. I want their grips to be extremely strong, so we don't use straps. But
Right. I see you guys doing towel pull-ups, weighted towel pull-ups. We don't really see, of course, I know I'm catching snippets of other programs when I look at Instagram, but I like when I'm looking at your stuff because I feel like I'm looking at modern day. You're using the technology, we're seeing the velocity, but then I'm seeing hill sprints and broad jumps going uphill. I feel like I'm like taking a trip back in time. I see some, Anderson squats, overloading. So you have this unique blend of knowledge, and just thinking of like your era of coming up in strength and conditioning, Rusty. When I was trying to learn weightlifting, if somebody had bumper plates, you thought they were a god. And I came up before YouTube was around. For you to learn weightlifting, you couldn't even look at it on a video. You had to get a VHS tape to visualize it. Then probably who taught you the weightlifts? Was it the first guy teaching you weightlifting was Cliff?
Well, I had a high school strength coach who played defensive line at Texas Tech way
Oh,
back in the
dang.
showed up with his Texas Tech summer of 1985, I believe it was 80 and 8. Oh, no, it would have been 80, probably 84. He just graduated from Texas Tech and got his first job at Azle High School. And so I think it was probably around 84, 85. He had his manual. And we were power cleaning with standard metal plates on plywood.
Okay.
We were dropping these weights and just splintering the wood. So we went and got some horse mats from a horse trailer and put it on the wood. And then now we're dropping 275 on horse mats. And I cleaned 275. Now get this. I learned how to clean doing a split catch clean.
That's the old style of York barbell. Is that how he taught you, or he let you kind of fall into it?
Taught me how to catch into a split catch clean.
I wonder who taught him that style.
I'm pretty sure I know the name. It's going to come to me here in a minute, but one of the old strength coaches at Texas Tech.
I'll do some, what I'll do is I'll go on and see if I could do some research on that. But you mentioning you guys were dropping the weights when a couple years ago I did the Iron Roots podcast and I interviewed Jan Dellinger. Do you know who Jan is? He used to work. He worked for Strength and Health. He's the last living employee who worked under Bob Hoffman. And so he told me the original York Barbell Club, which I think was called the York oil burner barbell club, because York was was fabricating oil heaters. The gym was on the second floor. so nobody could drop the weights. And he told me that, the constant eccentric is why those guys could kind of double as bodybuilders. They really put on a lot of muscle. So if they're snatching or clean and jerking, over 150 kilos, they weren't dropping it. They were,
Pretty amazing. That's
I
tough.
know. It's crazy hard. What's that?
Kelvin Clark was a longtime strength coach at Texas Tech.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if he taught the split catch, but somebody did. Maybe he was a track coach. Who knows? But this guy taught us the split catch. And then I learned how to catch it normally when I went to Midwestern State, my very first GA job. Britt Patton, I mentioned him at Summer Strong. Britt Patton, whose uncle was General Patton, taught me how to catch normal feet. So it's been an interesting ride, man. And I know there's a lot of stuff out there that more modernistic approaches that work, and I'm definitely implementing those. But I do believe a lot of hard work was done. The human body hasn't changed in a long time, and there's a lot of things you can pull from that 90s, 80s era that does work and work quickly. You do, you're riding the lightning a little bit, compared to speaking to some of the safe things that we can do now, teaching a kid to clean in front squat. Yeah, my wrist hurts. This hurts. That hurts. Can you develop power by throwing medicine balls and jumping and shrugging a trap bar? Yes. But I like to teach guys to do things that are hard, do hard things that are beneficial, that you can be better at it than the guy next to you. Man, well, I want to be that good. Well, you got to do this. And it creates this room kind of tension. And I like that. I enjoy that. I think that makes teams better. I like to harden young men and make them do difficult things. So
Well,
there's easy ways to do it and get the same benefit. I'll probably choose the harder way.
yeah, it's fun. Often tell coaches that for this, like, some time period, I wouldn't teach the front squat because I could not stand hearing kids complain about their wrists. And then I realized the problem was me, that I just didn't want to get through. I wanted everybody to be tough. So then I said, listen, it's going to be uncomfortable at first. And, like Dave Tate says, you're going to go from like shit to suck to crap to good. Some kids shock me and they could front squat perfectly from the gate. Other kids, I tell them, you need to work at this. And Coach Ethan Reeve reminds me, he says, you're a coach. You're supposed to teach. You're not just supposed to do the exercises that's easy to learn. And then I didn't learn weightlifting until I hosted a weightlifting seminar at my gym with Travis Mash. And I may have been, I was probably around 30. Actually, it was at this gym. I've had this gym for 10 years. So like 10 years ago is when I actually learned to front squat and clean. I had done it before, but never really gone through formal training. So I was 37 or 38 years old learning weightlifting. So I tell the kids, if an old guy who's had injuries can do it, you at age 13 or 15 can definitely learn it. Let me ask you this question, Rusty. So I don't want to crush your time here. What do you guys do for incoming freshmen? Do they go through like an intro phase alone for 4 weeks or whatever, some kind of thing?
So we do a 4-day split. They're in the room with our coaches at the exact same time. I have beginners row on one side and I have Main Street. I have 15 Sorinex racks. 5 of them are base camps that are double-sided, and there's one side that is standalone with the pulley systems behind them. So the back side of the base camps is our beginner's row. There's 5 platforms, 15 newcomers, between 15 and 20 newcomers. My 2 GAs are on that side. So if we're doing power clean with the main guys, we're doing power shrug pull and what I call a top down clean with the young guys. The top down clean is they get an empty bar and they get into a triple extension and they jump under it. Mm-hmm. And then they're supersetting that with the power. we do it. And then there are some kids who can come in and can clean. You know, they've been taught how to do it. So if they can clean, well, then you're cleaning. You know, we were doing some pretty complex squats because our summer was a direct extension of our off season and during spring football, and we got more progressively difficult with our movements. And instead of doing the Anderson complexes with the newcomers, we do 7 sets of what I call designer squats, and we're designing the perfect squat. Uh, the designer squat is, I break it down into 3 sets of eccentric with a 5 count down. And then we have 2 sets of pauses and 2 sets of down and ups. So that's 7 total sets, and you're doing eccentric, pause, and a normal squat in all those. And so we're breaking it down from every dimension on the squat.
That's awesome. What are you guys using to track? Are you using a software like iPad tablets, or how do the kids track their weights? Do you even track weights?
Yes, I track weights. We take a pen, we write it on their weight card.
Oh, you're still using the cards. Nice. That's great.
10 bar speed, and I don't put tendos on our newcomers. We're just using the coach's eye, and they're doing good technique, and the weight's usually very light with our newcomers. And we print out every 3 weeks, like Army West Point does. I got my format from them. They have a 3-week workout sheet, and they do blocks of 3 weeks, and we write down what weight each player did on each set, and I go back every day and I change their max based upon their performance each day. So it's tedious, but it lets me, I quickly know. I can look at a guy and go, hey, he did 385 last week for 3. He did 405 for 2, and it keeps everybody kind of involved, and all of our GAs and all of our intern. I have one intern and my other assistant. We walk around with pens and we're writing numbers, and it causes good interaction with our guys. And I'll say, last set, write it down. Every time we're doing a core movement, blow the whistle, and, hey, coach, I did 405. Is that your best? That's the best I've ever done. I had an offensive lineman transfer from a Power 5 conference, and yesterday we did the tendo deadlift, and with the linemen we did front squats. The linemen aren't doing single leg progression yet. So O-line, D-line did 5 sets of 5 front squats, starting at 65% of their clean max. Anyway, this transfer, on his last set of 5, he did 285 on front squat, and he's like, coach, that's the best I've ever done 5 times. He goes, my previous max was 275 on the front squat, and I just did 285 for 5. And I think it's the sequencing that we're doing and the volume that we're doing, and the self-confidence these guys get. I write down 285 and circle it, put a star like I'm grading a kid's paper in high school,
Right.
And they love that stuff. They love to see the progression and you acknowledging it. And it's just a way that we can do that every day. And they pull their workout sheets and it's got ink all over it. He did this, the previous day. And I'll look at their card and go, well, last week you did 275 for your single. Let's go 285. So
You could adjust it on the fly. I like that.
Call it old school, whatever, but it works. Like TV screens in the room. I don't like iPads on the racks. They just get in the way to me. We have Tendo and it works.
Right. So yeah, at my high school, I have none of that stuff. And then I see other high schools with everything, with GPS, with all kinds of wearables. And you could start thinking to yourself, man, should I be adding this, adding that? But then, I was speaking with my buddy, John Wellborn. John played in the NFL for 10 years. And we were talking about just, the importance of work and that brilliance with the basics. And sometimes you're so worried about the technology and matching what's on the technology that, especially an inexperienced coach, I think would be, I always wonder, you're inexperienced, you're chasing some sort of number, with velocity, but you don't recognize that the technique was flawed. But you're so busy chasing that number. That's why I think training and the coach's eye is crucial. What's your, you and I always say we're like quote unquote older. So we've got injuries. You had the ACL repair. We have decades of mileage on the body. You have a unique mileage on the body from playing sports, a contact sport, then being SF in the military, plus lifting. So all that stuff, how are you tweaking your own workouts to keep it going?
I squat with your standard RX pad on a bench, a Sorinex bench. We're very familiar with how high those are. I put an RX pad on that, and that's my squat depth. So it's right at a hamstring parallel. I have a right is needing replacement, and I'm fighting, and I get a lot of lateral swelling. Had an X-ray done, and it didn't look good. So, but the doctor said you've already kind of ground through your brake pads here, where it doesn't hurt, it just swells. So if I go deeper than 90, I swell up. So as long as I keep my hamstring parallel and don't get that deep, I'm squatting. I usually do Hatfields, or I'll do
Nice.
chain squats. Um, you know, working up to something that Bill Gillespie has recommended to me is do 2s and 3s instead of 4s and 5s. So I do a lot of doubles and triples, and to work. Bill's in his 60s and he's still remarkably strong, and he does doubles and triples and takes the volume off, but you're still attacking the fast twitch and your 2B fibers by going heavier. So I go doubles and triples, and then I use leg press. It doesn't hurt my knees, and I really can't do walking lunges very well. I can do rear foot elevated on a roller pad. Lunge, okay. And then I found a new exercise. What's new to me is the single leg rear foot elevated deadlift. So
yeah, I've seen that.
Bulgarian single leg deadlift, and it is the hardest thing I've probably done.
With a trap bar.
Nope, with a Olympic.
Oh, damn. I want to share a video of that. That's like a single leg, RDL, but your back foot is elevated?
Back foot elevated, one leg RDL.
Damn.
It is difficult to find the balance, but I did them last week. I completed one workout, and I did 5 sets of 3, and I was like, geez, that was humbling. So you're in the same position as a Bulgarian with your rear foot up, but now you're picking the bar up off the floor.
Yeah.
And you're not supposed to drop it. So it's
Oh,
tough.
don't drop the bar.
And because you're working the concentric eccentric lowering, but my point is it does not hurt my knee. My arthritic crappy knee, it does not hurt my knee to pick a weight up off the floor. Yeah. So if you want to do leg, you know what I'm going to do? You and I could do it if you want. I'm not going to guess your age. You're somewhere close to me. I probably got a couple of years on you, but
47.
training, and if you really want to keep up with the young guys and stay young and be active, there's a lot of things you can still do without just saying, hey, I can't lift anymore, So
yeah, I'm 47.
It does not hurt as much to deadlift. It doesn't hurt to do single leg deadlift, and doing a high squat. You can really get around a lot of things.
Here's another question. So I've got some old books on my desk, new books everywhere, and doesn't have to be a training book. What's like a favorite book or two that you have, training or non-training? It doesn't matter.
Favorite book that I have, man. Zatsiarski had the periodization book. That's one of my go-tos that Rock put me on a long time ago. Just my very first volume 1 of Essentials of Strength and Conditioning. Dr. Jack Wilmore was one of my professors at Texas, and I've got it back. I got a box at my house with about 4 books written by Wilmore, and um, what else? Super Training. I've messed with that one a few times. I got a copy of that. Um, it's like an elephant. You can't eat it.
That's
You
right.
got to eat it a bite at a time. But one of my favorite books is Beyond Band of Brothers by Dick Winters, who was they based the whole premise of Band of Brothers around.
Yeah, I think, does he write all those military books? Is Dick Winters one of them?
He was the one that wrote a memoir that the Band of Brothers book was written over. And if you can find any book written, I think he wrote a couple of books on leadership. And I think Dick Winters was 24 years old, maybe, when he jumped into Normandy, and just had to think on the fly. And the most remarkable 48 hours, I guess you could say, what they had to accomplish when they first jumped in, with their troops scattered everywhere. And all their plans, they all their plans and training had just completely gotten blown up. They had to think on the fly and react. And I guess the first 3 days they spent in Normandy, and what he learned, his life lessons, it's unreal. And you know, people say that, oh, you're so stuck in the old, that old, the greatest generation, and you're younger, you should be this and that. There's just so many lessons to learn from the chaos they were able to absorb and work through. So
What
the actual is a fantastic read. I'm reading a book right now called the Bloody Angle, about one of the Civil War battles up in Virginia, and the battle of the Wilderness, and the leadership in the most incredible, toughest times of mankind. I really enjoy seeing, reading about stuff like that. And it's a short paperback called The Bloody Angle, and I think more lives were lost in a 24-hour period at that battle of the Wilderness than even at Antietam. And it's yeah, I'm getting pretty far off of the track here, but
No, it's good.
seeing a perfect, the book, A Perfect Storm, just seeing people put in incredibly difficult situations, and how they try to fight through it. I love stories like that.
Right. The my buddy Jim Steele, who I think he was at UPenn for like 19 years, and he always reads military books or books of like it's always like older books, people surviving some sort of catastrophe. So he posted on his Instagram today like a photo of like a father and his daughter in India, like trying to find lunch in a garbage, like a mountain of garbage. And he's like, I like to show my kids this when they complain that, the air conditioning is not cold enough. And we're so, you know, even just reading about it is for me a good reminder of, we need discomfort.
Yeah.
Comfort is such an enemy, even if we're not competing as athletes anymore, because um somebody told me, Colonel Nye, retired colonel, he worked with Spartan Race. He described it as, comfort is a cage, and it just like locks you up, and you just have no growth, but you're comfortable in your cage, so you're like happy, yet you're lazy. And he said that's the problem with comfort. So what was your special forces group again? You were a Green Beret, Rusty, or what was the unit?
In Special Forces Group out of Fort Carson.
Mm-hmm.
I was what's called an 18 Echo communication sergeant. And I was going to tell you, my very first day in Iraq, um, we did a route familiarization tour. And in that route familiarization tour, we got shot at, got engaged with some Al Qaeda guys. And so within my first 12 hours, I got a combat infantry badge, And it was, a long story. But on the way back, we were driving through this small little village outside of Bakuba, Iraq. It's a big farming area. And there was a young girl, probably, I'm going to guess 3 years of age, standing on a pile of rubble, and she was wearing a trash bag, the kind of bag you see at Albertsons or Kroger. And it was, the little loops were over her shoulder, and he cut the bottom of it out, and it was her dress. And she was wearing a trash bag as a dress, and she was waving at us and pointing at her mouth. And we threw her some Snickers bars, and we had some Thai toys and different things the church had given us. And she was running over to grab some food, and then the whole horde of kids just came and just piled on top of that one Snickers bar. And so you can't even tell that story to a group of kids that I coach without them thinking, "Oh, you're just a prick for saying something like that." But I had those memories of a destitute, some of the poorest places in the world, and how you can't tell that story and expect them, any kind of reaction really, other than just dumbfoundness. You have to feed them a little bit at a time, to get the guys to be resilient and understand how privileged they are to be here and have this opportunity. But you can't just hit them with a hammer that hard and say, "Oh, you guys are all spoiled brats." They don't. You can't approach it that way.
Right.
But yeah, you
Different.
had a
Yeah. Different. You've been coaching longer than I have, and I've been coaching quite a while. And we've had to learn different styles of communication because what we once did doesn't work, or the training that we know works, they don't really maybe buy into it. So we have to incorporate things that they believe is beneficial. But I really like what you're saying. And my buddy said this, who coaches in the NFL, what you exactly said, that he said guys in the NFL, some of them, the wide receivers, they may not want to squat because they're like, I don't want to put on too much muscle because I'll be, 8 pounds or 5 pounds heavier. That'll make me slow. And he said what you said. His fear is that might injure them. And now they might miss out on several $1 million that could be generational wealth for the family. He's like, so they might lack durability. They might have that little extra hair of speed, but like what you're saying, and it made me think about today, the fastest kid on our team. I said to him, I go, bro, you need to go home and eat cheeseburgers. Like, you look like you'll get blown away in the wind, but nobody could catch him. But eventually somebody's going to catch him. And when you don't have
well,
muscle on your body, you get hurt.
not to interrupt you, but then I got this thought I got to get across. When you're, just say you got a fast guy who can only squat 315. He's a safety or a wide receiver, and he has a hard time, and he's not very strong, and he's afraid of squatting, and that exact same thing. I can't put on too much muscle. The physics of it are, if you go to a car dealership and you see a 6-cylinder and a Camaro, all right, that 6-cylinder engine weighs, say it weighs 400 pounds, but you put a 350 that weighs 580 pounds in it, you're going to go faster. Okay, so if you add lean muscle to a player and they get faster, that's just a win-win. You add lean muscle with a kid who has good genetics, who's genetically inclined to have type 2B fibers, they're going to be faster. We had a tight end show up from a junior college in January, and he was 214 pounds, ran 18.6 miles an hour in the off season. And we track twice a week. We do a speed related event with our GPS. Well, he weighed 231 yesterday and ran 19.6. So he gained around 17 pounds of lean mass, and he went 1 mile an hour or 1.4 some odd miles an hour faster than he did when he got here.
Yeah, 10% increase of speed, a little more maybe.
And his squat went from around 340 to 440. So it's just right there in plain sight, you know. And the good thing is I've been here long enough, and that's hard in our field to coach someplace 3 or 4 years without having to, get, kicked out. But all of our veteran players have been here and seen their lifts increase and their speed increase and their self-confidence increase. And, Reddy Stewart, one of our starting corners, who is going to play at the next level. I mean, his squat has gone up almost 200 pounds.
Yeah.
He ran 2 miles an hour.
22?
22 miles an hour yesterday. So Kamani Vidal, one of our running backs, ran 22:06, and he can squat 600 pounds.
Damn.
Not today. Not we do a lot of working maxes. We bump their working max up, and we keep increasing their workload. But he's a 340-pound power cleaner at squat 600, and he's kind of like Savon Barkley. If you ever saw some videos of him at Penn State,
I
and
don't
that
follow football enough.
What's that?
I don't follow football enough. The name sounds familiar.
Barkley plays for the Giants. Very, very strong guy. So strength to speed, man. Strength to speed. As long as you jump and you clean and you do explosive movements, you're good. Strength to speed to me.
Right.
And,
Well, Rusty, last question before you go. We were also at Winter Strong one year together. Hopefully I could get back there. Do you hunt? You hunt, right?
when I get a chance, I love deer hunting. I love duck hunting. I went pig hunting with Bill Gillespie over Summer Strong.
Oh, you
Yeah,
did? Dang it.
I got to
With a rifle or with a knife?
went with he went with a knife last week, but we went with rifles back in May 17th. We went with rifles in South Carolina.
And did you guys cook the meat? Cook the
I brought a cooler full of meat, and our DFO took it, and he's processed it and froze it. I'm supposed to get some back from him, and I'm gonna make some burritos out of it. Yeah, some pork burritos.
That's going to be great. So yeah, that was going to be my question to you is, how do you eat? Because I noticed like the hunters, especially at Winter Strong, a lot of the guys were kind of around our age. I mean, there was definitely guys younger, but the guys that were older were very fit. And they all said, listen, yeah, I'm just eating venison, elk, what did you guys hunt? Wild boars, they're called wild pig.
They were eating from a peanut farm, so they were eating peanut roots, and it was a somewhat leaner, more flavorful, less gamey pig. So, but yeah, that there's a generation of our age who most of them had a father or a father figure, and their older brother or somebody or an uncle that exposed them to hunting. My dad got me into quail hunting and dove hunting early on in Texas, and there's just a kinship you have with that, and completing the hunt with eating the meat. I think it's kind of a primal thing that's instinctive to men and the generation, and hopefully we can keep that going. But as far as what I eat, I like bison. Like, there's a grocery store down the street that sells bison. It's not particularly very cheap, but if you want to have a healthy body, and at the age that we're getting to, I try to put a good investment into my food. I like bison, lean ground beef, eat a lot of shredded chicken, black beans, a lot of eggs. Bill Gillespie tells me he eats like 14 eggs a day, and I'll mix with whites and some whole yolk eggs. So very basic diet, high protein. Try to avoid as much sugar as I possibly can. I have a weakness for popcorn, so that's my vice.
Popcorn, not too bad. I was talking yesterday with what's that?
I said chocolate chip cookies once in a while.
Those will get you. Yesterday I was talking with John Welborn about the anabolic diet, because when he was in the NFL, he hired Dr. Mauro Di Pasquale to do his nutrition. And I had an old bodybuilding friend who got into strongman, became a pro strongman. He did the anabolic diet, but he was in his 20s. So it was a dozen eggs for breakfast, a pound of ground beef at lunch. I'm not sure what he ate with the ground beef, then a dozen eggs for dinner. John said when he was in the NFL, he cooked all of those foods, the ground beef, the eggs, and something else. And then what he did was just put it in a massive bowl, mixed it all up, and then he put them in the ready to eat containers. So it was, high protein, high fat. And he said, he didn't say it yesterday, but a while ago we chatted. He goes, I think that his low sugar nutrition is why he doesn't have CTE, because he was a lineman. And he goes, a lot of the guys I played with struggling with that. He's like, they were really just drinking lots of Gatorade and, a lot of sugars. So he really feels that nutrition kept the inflammation, not just of the joints, but of the brain down.
Your brain sets in a gel of cholesterol. So it makes sense to me to eat a diet high, low density, cholesterol. So I take a lot of fish oil, about 4 tablets a day. Again, I look at Bill's big into krill oil. So yes. I find it, I've had, playing in the era that I played in, you were taught to use your head.
Right.
So far, so good,
So I'm going to link up your Instagram for people. I'll link it up in the podcast show notes. I'll embed videos over at zachevanish.com. Can coaches ever reach out to you, or people in general reach out to you, Rusty? I know you're busy coaching. That's your thing.
At Rusty Whitt, and just hit me up and direct message me. I get a lot of direct messages all the time. I'm happy to share any knowledge and gain some knowledge. I'm definitely, my glass is half full. I still have to learn a lot and stay relevant. And the last thing I want to say about relevancy is, if you want to have a job at this level, you have to listen to your position coaches, listen to your head coach, what they want. Mm-hmm. And going way back to the power clean conversation, and it's kind of my last point, is that why do we power clean? Well, our tight ends coach and our offensive line coach wants guys to be able to change levels from extension to flexion and rapidly do that. And if you don't catch or clean, then guys can get in a position where they don't feel the need to change levels rapidly. And that catch position makes them do that.
Yes.
Yeah. Again, we're making guys do hard things. And that was a thought that I had about the power clean. I didn't get to sneak in on that, but listening to your coaches, what they want, and then seeing how your philosophy fits into that. And there's always a way you can fit a philosophy into what the head coach wants. So
very smart. Very smart. Well, Rusty, you are the man. I love always we get to spend our time together at Summer Strong, hopefully Winter Strong. Want to thank everybody for listening. Share this podcast with a friend. Leave a 5-star review. Hit the links below. Connect with Rusty on Instagram. And where you're in Alabama, right? Troy's in Alabama?
South Central Alabama.
So if you're in that area, try to get to a game. How many does the stadium hold?
Around 34,000, I think now.
Wow, that's awesome. That is, yeah, that's amazing.
Appreciate your time, dude.
I appreciate you, brother. So excited we got to connect. I'm gonna shut it down here, so hang tight while we say goodbye. Everybody, again, thank you for supporting. Hit the links below. That's the best way to support. And we're out of here until the next time.